All right, everybody. Stocks by the numbers. Welcome back. I know I'm coming to you later here on a Friday. We just did a lot of updates for a lot of names that we were kind of keeping an eye on over the last week or so. We looked at obviously STEM, SoundHound, did a quick update on Take Two, Honest. But this was a company that someone asked me for an update about, and unfortunately, as you see, the stock has been down since the last time we looked at it all the way back here. It was roughly 4 months ago in the first week of April. And this is J Long Group Limited, ticker symbol JL, listed here on the NASDAQ. There's a company, it's distributor, kind of, I know they did like heat transfers and stuff. We were looking at the prospectus and talking about the potential shares coming out of this lockup period here right around the end of July as these earnings came out just a couple of weeks back. But as you see, the stock is down here 35 cents today, up a little over 2%. Recently hit new lows of 31.5 cents. We looked at the stock back here and I mentioned that it had a big sell-off coming down out of the gate. Again, this is an equity, unfortunately, out of Hong Kong, I believe. And I said in my opinion at the time that personally, I wouldn't feel too comfortable investing into a lot of Chinese equities at the time. And I know even Alibaba, BABA, kind of up and down. And we're just not seeing the type of growth that a lot of them may even deserve, right? But we looked at JL a couple of months back and we looked at these numbers that came out the end of March. And we saw a pretty big decrease in not only overall revenue and a tick up in expenses as well, but more importantly, I mentioned the heat transfer segment, which according to the prospectus was where the bulk of their revenue was coming from, right? And that segment took a hit. So that's why I said, in my opinion, I would kind of personally have a wait and see attitude. And back here on the 5th, I mean, stock was like 89 cents. Let me zoom in a little bit. So we came down off this big drop. The company randomly paid out this special dividend. Again, in my opinion, maybe just trying to like calm shareholders down. It looked like we were potentially in this big wedge, but I mentioned kind of this bottom that we were looking at. And I said, in my opinion, we're basically forming what looked like a descending triangle, which of course is bearish. And I said also, it's funny, I just rewatched the video and I said maybe you can see a tick up, the next day or two back into around this apex, but you can potentially see a rejection. And I was looking for this bottom trend line. I believe it was maybe about like 70 cents or like 68 cents. And you can see that we broke down to the low 70s. We tried to have a little bump back up to about 85, and then we just chunked straight down to sub 60. Then we had a nice rally back up to about $1, right? Now we fast forward, back up a little bit, and you can see we had the low there, 57, rallied back up to $1, and then we continued that downward trajectory, right? Looks like we were almost forming another descending wedge. Then you can see this lockup period, the shares now being freed up, in my opinion, really didn't make any difference. And more importantly, you can see that as these numbers came out, the stock began to drop even further, broke down below this bottom trend line of this wedge, hit a low of 31.5 cents. Looks like it tried to reclaim that bottom trend line, possible rejection, just kind of flattening out now in the 30s. So, first of all, again, not trying to brag or boast too much, but got this one correct. Again, I basically said in my opinion that because the revenue was dropping and then the random dividend just kind of came out of left field, I said in my opinion, right, wait and see. Let's see what happens like around this time. And as you see, unfortunately, the stock didn't really start to rally up after that supposed lockup period ended. And then we had numbers come out and unfortunately they were actually down a little bit, and that's probably in my eyes what caused the drop for the stock. And you can see this is an article that came out just a couple of weeks ago, end of July, and you can see they report earnings results for the full year ending March 31st 2024. Steam friend, my apologies. J Long Group Limited reporting earnings for the full year. Company reported sales of 28.38 million US dollars compared to 38.29 million a year ago. So roughly a 10 million drop in revenue year over year, which in my eyes is definitely a big flag. Net income was 0.78 million, which is 780,000, compared to 6.6 million a year ago. Basic EPS from continuing operations was 3 cents a share compared to 22 cents a share a year ago. So, in my opinion, this is very bad news. And even though if we just take a step back and say, oh, look at the market cap, it's undervalued. Again, I appreciate that, and I understand a lot of people made that argument last time, but because these numbers were so rough and people were kind of on the wait and see end of the lockup shares, this is why I said, again, in my opinion, I would just kind of wait and see if the company can rebound in the numbers roughly 6 months from that day. And again, we can see that these numbers came in significantly lower than where they were the year prior. So in my opinion, this company is struggling right now, obviously. And also I mentioned that because now this whole time the stock was below $1 here, and potentially going lower after we looked at it, I said, in my opinion, you have to kind of keep your antenna raised because you may potentially hear about the NASDAQ compliance letter and we could potentially see a reverse stock split on the horizon. And that is basically what happened just inside of the last couple of months. As you see, middle of May, J-Long Group Limited receives NASDAQ deficiency notice regarding minimum bid price requirement. Ordinary shares will continue to trade on the NASDAQ global market. Group JL received the notice from the NASDAQ, not currently in compliance with the dollar minimum bid requirement. The notice indicates the company has 180 days or until November 11th to regain compliance with the minimum bid requirement by having the closing bid price, again, bid is what you'll get to sell the shares, right? So not the ask, the bid, meet or exceed $1 per ordinary share for at least 10 consecutive days. And unfortunately, based on those recent numbers that came out, I'm not very confident that this company can get back to $1 plus on its own merits and be able to meet that requirement, like it said, for 10 consecutive business days. In my opinion, I really don't see a catalyst to bring the stock back up to $1 plus and keep it there. But that's just me. The company intends to monitor the closing bid price of its ordinary shares and may, if appropriate, consider implementing available options to regain compliance with the minimum bid price requirement, including a reverse stock split. If the company does not regain compliance by the compliance deadline, the company may be afforded an additional 180 calendar day period to regain compliance as provided by the NASDAQ listing rules. So, unfortunately, it seems like this may be inevitable. And again, right now, looking at those numbers, in my opinion, I still would not be a buyer of this company. And it's just a very unfortunate situation. And you know as well as I do, sometimes we step into these situations thinking that Wall Street may have overreacted, right? A lot of short sellers may be beating it up and it's probably going to, bottom out and rebound sometime. And unfortunately, sometimes it just does not happen. But we can see recently, look at how tight those Bollinger Bands were going right into the end of July with that lockup period and that semi-annual earnings report coming out. And then unfortunately, again, the company comes in light with those numbers and it drops down instead of breaking up. If they were able here with this tightening and how much it dropped and pulled back, if they were able to actually come in above those estimates and whatever it was, last year they did 38 million, I think it said. And that's what I mean. If they were able to just get back to that value or potentially even a little higher, close out the year doing 40 million, in my opinion, we may have seen an explosion and you may have seen this stock rally back up to this $2 level right here that it hung out at before it broke down. So it could have had the potential to really explode back up. Not only would that bring a lot more eyes back on the stock, not only would that bring potential new volume coming into the company now, looking forward for the next year or two, but also that would have regained their uh, good compliance stature with the NASDAQ, right? And unfortunately, that didn't happen, and we ended up breaking down. You can see the 50-day moving average dropped down hard with the stock. It's been steadily dropping down, and the stock has really not even come close to even try to retest it. You can see the whole time since we looked at it as well. Again, we looked at it like here, April 5th. So we had the drop, we ran back up to $1, and then since then you can see just multiple rejections off the mid Bollinger Band, not even able to really get to the top end of this B band range, and then breaks down to the downside. So unfortunately, in my opinion, it more than likely will stay down here or potentially go lower. And it does maybe sound like, because it's been down for so long now, again, several months straight, in my opinion, I have to say that a reverse stock split is more than likely coming sooner rather than later. The RSI, as you see, dropped below that 30 benchmark now for a couple of weeks, sitting here at about 28 and 3/4. Again, in my opinion, even something like a low RSI for traders may not be enough to really drive a lot of volume and a lot of growth into the stock price itself. However, we did see that when it was down here at 57, it had this nice rally back up to $1. So, of course, it is possible now that it can go from 35 cents, back up to like 45, 50 cents, which, of course, from a percentage standpoint, would be a phenomenal return in the immediate short term if you guys are able to handle that type of risk with this type of stock, and just kind of get in, get out, and do a quick little scalp play, trying to make a quick 30% or something. But again, in my opinion, when you have kind of, again, they're not necessarily poor fundamentals, but they're decreasing, right? And obviously in this kind of amazing capitalist stock market that consistently hits new highs, people want to see consistently growing revenue. They want to see consistently growing profits. Or if the company happens to take a hit in profits this quarter, you want it to be followed with some sort of positive, right? Oh, well, we took a chunk of our profits and we rolled it into a new investment. That's why we missed earnings. We rolled it into a new facility to expand our operations, right? So even if you have a slight negative in the earnings report, if it's followed by some sort of future growing catalyst, then they kind of could potentially cancel each other out, and the stock doesn't immediately take that hit and start selling off. The problem is, again, JL just kind of coming out with consistent decreasing revenue and EPS numbers, as we saw, earned 22 cents a share this time last year. Now we're down to 3 cents a share. So in my opinion, I do think it stays rocky. And unfortunately, unless they come out and say, oh, they signed a new client or they just got a huge order or something like that, unless that happens, chances are, in my eyes, I really don't see any urgency to step into this company. And let's switch over to the weekly real quick. I'll let you go. We can see RSI essentially just virtually flat here at 33. Bottom Bollinger Band down here at 28 cents, right? So after these numbers and after breaking out of the tightness on the daily, we can actually potentially see a drop down to 28 cents a share. But again, in my opinion, right now I just feel like the stock is kind of like that stick in the mud. And even though you may feel that it's undervalued again in the market cap, I just feel that even if they're able to turn it around 6-12 months from today with future earnings, unfortunately, I just think it went too low too quick. And I personally believe that a reverse stock split is going to be incoming, which again, excuse me, even if they do like a 1 for 10 reverse stock split and the stock jumps up to like 350 a share, we've seen time and time again after reverse stock splits that usually more times than not, the stock will continue to sell off after it pops and does that price adjustment. So even if this jumps back up to $3 or $30, chances are it will slowly start to tick down afterwards. And again, basically what that would translate to is, now if you've been involved, you've lost a lot of your principal investment. Now you're going to have less shares, and now those shares are going to potentially go even lower, right? So you may turn around 6 months from now, see a big spike and see that continued sell-off, and instead of being down 30, 50, 70%, you're going to potentially be down 90, 96, 99%. when it's all said and done and the dust settles. So that's why, in my opinion, I know it really hurts and it really sucks when you personally believe in a situation and the company doesn't deliver. STEM, but we'll put that aside. But again, we know that we're not in control, right? So we have to control the controllables. And I know everyone has that fear, oh, I'm going to sell here at 35 cents and then something's going to happen and it's going to go to, $3. I understand that fear. But unfortunately, again, as the saying goes, sometimes you have to work smarter, not harder, right? So hanging on, kind of going down with the ship, hoping and praying that something big happens and you get some positive announcement, in my eyes, just adds to the anxiety level, adds to the stress level. And again, I know some of you may be taking 70-80% losses here if you sell at this level, but again, there are a lot of companies out there that are kind of consistently growing, like Honest, for example. That's a nice little grower. The stock is still pretty cheap, in my opinion, and it's kind of on the up and up, right? So that's why I always just remind everyone that we've looked at a lot of names on this channel, and I'm sure you can go back and you can find one or two names that are probably more fundamentally solid and stable than something like JL right now. And, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's all I have to say, and I'll end it there. But, for you guys who want to hang on and you really believe in the long term, of course, I'm wishing you the best of luck. And of course, if, roughly 6 months from now, again, when they report their semi-annual report, or if they make an announcement or get upgraded, or, an activist takes a position or something like that. If any news hits, of course, you guys know I'll do an update video for you. But again, in my opinion, I personally wouldn't be a buyer down here at this level. I would be wait and see. It dropped down to this low here, 31.5 cents. And you can see I just drew a quick trend line there from the bottom on August 5th up to today, August 9th, just cutting across. And we're still below this bottom wedge trend line that we were in. So in my opinion, it's probably going to channel in here. Could potentially pop back up into the wedge, but might stay down again for the foreseeable future. It could very well happen. But yeah, that's pretty much it. So I'll end it there. But once again, this is Stocks by the Numbers. I want to thank you guys for stopping by. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, drop it down in the comments section. I'm usually very quick to reply. Thumbs up algorithm helps me get more eyes on the channel. And of course, subscribe to the channel. That is our handshake agreement. That is how you help me help you. But more importantly, moving forward, like I always say, I understand that markets are rocky, they're volatile, they are very uncertain. So I want to wish all of you success. I hope everyone makes a couple of dollars. Thanks for your time. I want you guys to have a good weekend.